Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Well, there was a really interesting move this week by Joe Biden on his way out where he gave an unconditional pardon, preemptive pardon, to Anthony Fauci, which surprised the heck out of a lot of folks. And it got me thinking about, okay, that whole pandemic period. What lessons did I learn, and what type of health changes did I make? Because I made a lot of very positive health changes because of the pandemic and the response to it, and my response was a little bit different than most people's. So I thought I'd share some of the lessons that I learned and some of the lifestyle changes that I made as a result of the pandemic. So let's talk about 4 of them in particular. Number 1 is I went carnivore. And you may be going, well, why would you want to go carnivore because of a pandemic? Well, it wasn't so much the virus that got me that way. I'd been looking at videos from Dr. Sean Baker and some others that were talking about the usefulness of a carnivore diet for overall health, and I thought that was a little bit extreme. I was low carb for about 3 years going into the pandemic, but frankly, it was the lines for toilet paper that, people were lining up at the grocery store and all this other stuff trying to get toilet paper. And I'm like, I don't want to, I don't think the pandemic's as bad as they really think it is, but I really don't want to be crammed in a bunch of lines with people looking for toilet paper that, and I figured out that, I could go to the grocery store once a month, buy a month's worth of meat and eggs, and I don't have to go again. Because when you're doing, vegetables and stuff like that, you need to go at least once a week or so to the grocery store to restock on that stuff. So I just switched over and found out, boy, this is great. I lost about 10 pounds. I really felt fantastic, and it was easy, and it was delicious, and it was sustainable. So I was like, okay, let's give this carnivore thing more of a shot, and started studying more about it and realized that, it really does work and it's healthy. All my biomarkers continued to improve, and I kept getting stronger, more muscular, and I was very excited about it. So, that was major change number 1 because of the pandemic. Was I, switched over to carnivore just to avoid lines, and so I didn't have to go out in the public as much. So that was number 1. Number 2 was I discovered vitamin D. And I'd heard about vitamin D. I knew it was kind of important. I would get it tested every now and then, but I really didn't understand its importance until the pandemic happens. And the reason why it jumped up at me was because in northern Italy, where they were really hit hard, and they were trying to figure out why it was killing people so much over there, is one of the things that they realized is the people there had extremely low vitamin D levels. And that got me poking into it, going, okay, what's this vitamin D thing and why is it important? And then I started figuring out, wait a second, this thing is like a hormone, and it's vital to your immune health and a whole host of other functions, including better sleep and a whole, it was almost like a miracle vitamin. And I realized that my vitamin D level, while it was adequate and not, within the range, it wasn't over 50. And I really started working hard to increase my vitamin D level, to optimize it, to make sure that, my immune system was as strong as I possibly could. So I started walking without a shirt on. It was March by that point, and started supplementing with vitamin D, building up that level. And it's become kind of a love affair. I've kind of joined this cult of people that really are into vitamin D. And it is a very powerful thing. And, one of the reasons why I don't think it's gotten the credit that it deserves is it wasn't really studied at Harvard. the people that did most of the initial research on it were over at the University of Wisconsin. And as a result, because it wasn't from Harvard, the mainstream media really didn't pay that much attention to it. But the more you study it, the more you realize just how important it is. And one of the other reasons why nobody talks about it is because it's so darn cheap. It is a very inexpensive thing that you can get at Walgreens, and for $10 you can get 2 months supply of vitamin D that will help boost your levels. And because it's so cheap, nobody takes it seriously, but it's vital to your long-term health and does so many things for so many different areas that is well worth studying. And I'm really glad that I really discovered it thanks to the pandemic. Number 3 was how I exercise. I'd always gone to the gym, was doing resistance training, trying to build muscle, and bam, here comes the pandemic and they close the gyms. So I can't get, my regular exercise the way I've been doing it over at CrossFit gyms and other stuff. Okay, and that's kind of a problem. So, and I found this really great little workout program where I could utilize a couple of 20-pound dumbbells and get a full body workout, and it sounded great. The problem was I couldn't get 20-pound dumbbells at that particular moment. It was really difficult to get exercise equipment that you could use at home during the pandemic. So I did a little bit more research and found variable resistance, basically using bands. And I read the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, and realized that I could incorporate what I'd learned from other books on utilizing working to near as close to exhaustion as you possibly could, working to failure, and utilizing bands and variable resistance using an interval timer. And I could get about 90+% of the results that I could with anything else. And I think I got better results utilizing that technique. So I started doing workouts at home, and I found out something really kind of cool. I can get a really good workout done in about 20 minutes using bands that I can take with me on long trips, and I can get almost all the results that I could going to a gym, which took me, let's say, an hour and a half or so. When you think about how much time it takes you to get dressed over there, do your workout, and come home. I could get all that stuff done in a much shorter period of time. And I think variable resistance actually is better on your joints than utilizing a lot of weights and stuff. So I kind of bought into this whole idea, and I think improved my overall health and built up more muscle thanks to the pandemic and switching over to variable resistance training. So that was another change. But the most important one was where I figured out where I was getting worked over on health information. One of the things that at that particular moment, I didn't have cable. And I didn't watch CNN or anything else. I got my news online. Different videos, podcasts, reading news media sources from other countries, etc. And as a result, my view of the world was not being shaped by the CNNs of the world, who were basically engaged in fear porn. I remember watching Tucker Carlson at the beginning of the pandemic, where he mentioned that, hey, look, there's a real good possibility that this virus could kill 5% of the population, which, okay, I like Tucker. I don't know how serious that is, but I want to be in the upper 95%. So how do I avoid it? And that's, I was looking at, the initial fear stuff as to start making changes to avoid being part of that group that was going to die. But I realized that a lot of my friends, were really watching too much CNN because they were stuck at home they would watch Netflix, and after they do that, they'd turn on CNN and get all this fear porn, and it's these tickers going off all the time that we're talking about how many people are dying, and we've got to hunker down and be scared to death. And nobody was talking about how to get healthy, and which surprised the heck out of me, because one of the things that the Obama administration used to always talk about was never let a good crisis go to waste. And you've got a situation where a big hunk of this country was metabolically unhealthy, had very low vitamin D levels, was not getting enough exercise, and we're telling people to stay at home and eat ice cream and watch more CNN. And that, to me, was like really bad advice. And then along comes this weird thing called the Diamond Princess. And you may remember this cruise ship where somebody came down with a case of COVID on the ship, one of the passengers, and they were quarantined for over a month at this port. And I was sitting there going, wow, 5% or more of those folks are probably going to die in the course of that thing. And as it turns out, frankly, only one person died. And you're just sitting there going, okay, this whole COVID thing isn't as bad as they're saying it is, because here's the worst case scenario with these people stuck on this cruise ship and only one person died. It's not that bad. But the problem is it wasn't covered by the mainstream media, and as a result, most people never realized it. But because I was not getting my news from those sources, I realized that, if you don't get your news and your health news from people that are paid for by big pharma and big food, you get better stuff. So that was one of the major changes that I made, was how I got my news information. And frankly, it was mostly because of COVID and seeing how not being caught up in the fear porn really made a big difference. And you got much better sources. You've got to use some discernment, and it's not easy to get all your news from all these different sources, but it certainly is much better. I mean, there are people that I know that were putting videos up on Facebook where they were in their driveway washing down their groceries before they brought them into their house because they were so panicked. And that was just absolutely, utterly ridiculous. But that's the way things were for most people, unless you were getting your news from alternative sources. So those are my 4 big lessons. Number 1, going carnivore, learning about vitamin D, utilizing variable resistance band training, and getting my news on health from alternative sources. What did you learn? What were some of the big things that you learned from the pandemic? Please leave a comment down below. I'm curious about how other people saw things during the last few years. And what did you learn from all this type of stuff? I mean, just because something bad happens doesn't mean that you can't learn new things from it. And there's certain lessons that we really should learn so we don't make the same mistakes. I mean, frankly, if you were one of those people that were turning in your neighbors because they had more than 3 people at their house, guess what? During the Nazi time, you would have been a prison guard. I hate to be that blunt, but that's where it is. You were not going to be the hero that was going to kill Hitler. You would have been the person that would have been turning in Anne Frank. That's just the horrible reality of it. But thankfully, a bunch of folks learned how to get healthier, made positive changes, learned something about how the news media works and the news that we got from our government sources, and started looking at things, utilizing their own common sense and their own judgment. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a couple messages each week. Please hit like and subscribe. Join this channel of other people that are really working hard to change their health for the good. I will talk to you again soon.